got some, I have collected some questions from y'all. Good morning, Michael. How are you this morning? I'm good. I'm good. It's a good 72 degrees outside. I go for a walk every morning with the dogs. They do the same thing every morning and they just frolic. And so it's a nice day outside. I think it's supposed to rain, but I'm good. I'm good. I got some questions from you guys. And but I'm going to start, of course, with our ongoing skit series on the blackest squads of all time, and I've been trying to figure out um, which squad we're going to do today. And I think I'm going to do what they used to call. It went by different names depending on where you were, but they were called union leagues, loyal leagues, and they were after the Civil War, of course, when black people got the right to vote. They were essentially voter advocacy groups, political organizations throughout the South. And as Reconstruction continued, they became kind of groups of self-protection. So in South Carolina, they would be called the Union League. I don't know if you guys remember, but we did uh, uh, primary sources on a guy named Essie Harris. Essie Harris was a dude who was in a Union League, was a sharecropper, lived on his uh, former enslavers' land in North Carolina, in Chatham County, North Carolina. And the KKK was terrible there. And they came to the Essie Harris's house. First, they went to another one of Essie Harris's friend's house. And then they went to Essie. And what they would do is just go around and start collecting guns. As a matter of fact, one of the NRA's first duties was protecting the rights of formerly enslaved people because the KKK would disarm them. Well, when they came to Essie's house, Essie Harris had like 6 kids and a wife, and they surrounded his house. And Essie Harris didn't want to bother nobody, man. Plus, he believed in a bunch of people he had been told all of his life that if you shoot the KKK, and I know this sounds crazy, if you shoot the KKK, the bullets would bounce off of them. And if you think that sounds crazy, like it's not really that much crazier than how we believe, like, white people save their money or white people being, they have good credit. They know what to do with their money. Nah, it was just privilege. It's almost the physical embodiment of the bullets bounce off the KKK. Well, when they surrounded Essie Harris's house and they started shooting it up, Essie Harris told his family to get under the bed, in the bathtub, hide in the closet. And his son, he had 2 guns. A rifle, one he shot, went hunting with a shotgun that shot, squirrels and stuff like that. And then he said a 7-shooter, which is, I want to see that gun, but he said a 7-shooter, a pistol, a revolver. And he had no choice but to just start shooting back at the Klan. And he shot a dude in the chest and one dude in the eye, and he realized, oh, wait, the thing that they taught me wasn't true. And we know Essie's story because he was called before the Senate and the House, a joint subcommittee, to testify on what they call the outrages in Chatham County. And so Essie Harris said, like, when he saw that his bullets could actually penetrate them, he took his shotgun. He said, I took all that squirrel shot out and I put an uncommon load in it, a dangerous load. This was a quote. And he just started shooting them and they ran away. Well, the Union League, he was an example of a Union League leader. He moved and he was still a member of the Union League. And the Union Leagues, again, they were black voter organizations. And when you hear people talk about the Republican Party, was black people were originally Republicans. That's kind of true, although we really kind of don't know because from the first time they started collecting black voter data, which is in the 1930s, it shows that they were always voting for the Democratic Party president, although they identified kind of equally at first, some as Republicans, some as Democrats. So anyway, as these outrages grew, the Union League, because these outrages were not just like we hate black people, we're going to attack them. They were actually trying to stop black people from voting. And so the Union League kind of morphed from being this political organization to this protection league. And what happened was they just went to war with the Klan, and we rarely talk about this. So when the Union League went to war with the Klans, the the government just started looking for a solution, right? So first, the president hired this dude, Amos T. Ackerman, and he put him in charge of like looking after this Klan thing. And the Klan, he started arresting the Klan, especially in South Carolina. Hey, Carmelita. Good morning, Carmelita. And when he started arresting the Klan, though, he arrested so many Klansmen that he says, you know what, man, we're not going to be able to prosecute all of these people. So what we're going to do is just give the Klan blanket immunity. But he couldn't say we're going to give the Klan blanket immunity. He said, hey, look, if you were part of an outrage, if you were, arrested for being in a fight that involved racism and attacking black voters, we're going to give you immunity. But what happened was by then the Union League had grown so strong that the Klan was filing charges against the black people. And so the Union League had immunity too. And the Union Leagues had become so strong, the Klan had been scared and they wanted the government to like strip away this immunity. Now we don't need no immunity, just prosecute these outrages because the Union League was taking down the Klan wherever they saw them. So the president of the United States told Ackerman, hey, I'm going to put you in charge of like this whole new organization inside the federal government. Is you're going to be a member of my cabinet. And that person, Amos T. Ackerman, and that position and that agency was the Department of Justice. So the Department of Justice was born because black folks were fighting back against the Klan. And that's how the Department of Justice, the DOJ, came to be. There was never an attorney general. Amos T. Ackerman was the first one. There was never an attorney general until that started happening. And as a matter of fact, he was only the attorney general for about a year because they felt like he was going too easy on the black folks who were attacking the white folks. And he hired another attorney general. And that is partly how Reconstruction ended because the railroad companies, he not only started going after the Klan, he started going after the railroad companies because they were segregating, they were buying land up from black folks, they were displacing black folks. And that's actually how he lost his job. And the railroad companies like kind of joined together because they were the original, like they were the tech bros. Railroad companies were the tech bros of the late 1800s. If you want to know some evil dudes, bruh, the railroad companies, those were the tech bros. But they convinced the government to, first of all, strip away that immunity and disband the loyal leagues. And that's when the Republican Party started a movement called the Lily White movement to get black people out of the Republican Party. So they were all tied to these union leagues. So that is today's entry for one of the baddest squads of all time is the union leagues because they were black protective organizations that had a political side to them too. Now, if don't forget if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'm going to look up some of these questions that y'all had. Now, apparently, Substack has this new feature where you can share screens. I didn't study on it yet, so I'm not going to try it in real time yet. But the first question is, did you see the Stephen A. Smith interview saying that he might run for president? And what do you think? I know you said we should ask who sent them. Yeah, when I saw that, like, first of all, if you haven't seen this interview, Stephen A. Smith said, well, if if I was president, I tell you what, we wouldn't have less police. We wouldn't be no defund police. It would be more police. And if I was president, we wouldn't have this problem at the border. Like, if we would focus on the economy. Like, it's such a dumb novice thing to say because there is no president who doesn't think the economy is important, Democrat or Republican, right? Like they might have different approaches. Even the Trump administration knows that the economy is important. So that shows how idiotic he is. But the thing about defund the police and we would have more police, what I think people don't understand about that is when they say defund the police, when they get scared, when they hear that, they think we just like black folks or whoever says that don't want police. And I'll explain what I mean. Defund the police, right? So imagine if you were married or like you had parents and your parents spent money to on something for the house, right? Like they thought that it kept the house like an alarm system, and you paid half of your salary, half of your family income to a company that had an alarm system and put an alarm system in your house, and it was supposed to stop people from stealing. It was supposed to be able to signal to 911 whenever there was an emergency. It would stop people from breaking into your house, and it would show who broke into your house. It would give you video. But every time somebody broke into your house, the alarm wouldn't go off. And every time somebody broke into your house, the video wouldn't capture them. Would you keep paying for that alarm system? Would you keep paying for that security company? No one would. And that's what the police are. The police, we give millions and billions of dollars in federal dollars, state dollars, and local dollars to this organization that is supposed to do three things: solve crimes, keep us safe, and protect the public, right? And they don't do either of them. We know that about 2% of crimes that happen are actually solved. 2%. And that's in a good year, right? Now, that includes crimes that aren't reported, right? So most people, if somebody break into your house, they don't report the crime because like they know they ain't gonna get their TV back. But among the people who do report the crimes, it's about 47 to 48%, right? Like it never reaches 50%, what they call clearance rate. Crimes that were reported, solved, and prosecuted. That never reaches 50%. The last time it was 50% was 99 2000, right? That year. Because I remember that, not because like I'm real this one and have this like brain that's a steel trap. It's because I always make the joke that like the last time the clearance rate was above 50% was during the cash money era, the cash money administration of the 99 and 2000s. But so they don't solve even half of the crimes. They don't prevent most of the crime. They don't predict pre they don't prevent 98% of crimes. They don't solve the ones that they know about. They don't, stop bank robberies and domestic abuse and burglaries. So why are we putting so much money into this thing that doesn't work? Well, the first thing we would have to do to create an organization that actually solve crimes and protect people and kept us safe was to defund that organization that doesn't do all of that stuff, right? So we're not saying, hey, we don't want nobody out here solving crime. Just saying, hey, we want an organization that solves crimes. So we got to defund the organization that does it, right? It is crazy to think that we would just double down, right? And give more money to crime solving when we give all of this money to people who don't give their job. So the only way we can fix the crime solving problem is to defund the people who are bad at solving crimes. The only way we can s- stop or prevent crimes is defund the inadequate crime prevention network called the police. So if you want to be safe, if you want to call somebody that will come and stop crime and, you know, arrest the bank robbers, you have to defund the thing that we already have. Because, like, what good would it do to keep paying the old alarm company while you put in a new security system? It makes no sense. It's not even a radical idea. The most logical way to approach crime in this country is to defund the police. There is no other way. If you don't do it, we will continue to have this police brutality problem. We will continue to have all of the problems that we have. You have to defund the police to fix America's crime problem, right? We know that, like, we can't stop the drug problem in America by just arresting dudes that hang on the corner. It's dumb. We know it's dumb. So all of those people we got out jumping out of cars that we pay to jump out of cars and throw 14-year-old black boys on the ground who have no boats and no planes and no connections in Colombia with the Mexican cartel. If we keep paying those people, we'll never be able to solve the drug problems. We have to defund that part of the police, right? The biggest violence producer in America is domestic violence, right? It's partly because it's a mental health problem. But if we just keep paying dues to answer 911 calls and show up to your house with a gun whenever a man beats his wife, we're never going to be able to address domestic abuse. You got to defund that part of it. If we want a common sense immigration policy, because now they've wrapped the police and ICE up all in this like one entity. But if we really want to solve the immigration policy, you got to make it so that the people who are here, who are undocumented, have a path to citizenship. Well, those people are never going to come to court and do the things that they need to do to be a citizen if they are scared that you're going to arrest them as soon as they walk into the courtroom. If they're scared that you are going to arrest them if they're walking down the street or showing up to their jobs. You got to defund ICE. You got to abolish ICE to have a common to fix the immigration problem, right? And I don't think either side argues that there is no immigration problem. I think one side argues that there is a common sense way to fix it, and the other side says, "Hey, what if we just get a bunch of policemen?" Because that's what they are, right? Policemen, right? When you talk about border security, you're saying, "What if we put more low educated, unqualified people with guns at the border, and then we put them in your neighborhood and just have them jump out the car and kidnap anybody who looks Hispanic. So when we say abolish ICE, you don't mean open the borders, right? Because they try to give you that too the false equivalency, right? If you don't like ICE, you must be one open borders. Nah, like putting dudes with guns at the border will not stop people from sneaking into America. You got to address it with technology. You got to address it with legislation. You got to address it. You got to address why these people are coming over illegally instead of legally, right? But you can't do that. I mean, there is a limited supply of money. So you got to abolish this dumb thing that they have, ICE, which just jumps out of cars and just like put these 14 million people in America who are undocumented, and they think we're going to jump out of cars and lock all of those people up. Back to Stephen A. Smith. So when he says stuff like this, right, you know he's not a serious thinking person. Now, I always thought that he was benign. It was laughable, right? Because, like, white people ain't going to vote for Stephen A. Smith because the Republicans are racist. And the Democrats ain't going to vote for him because he don't have no ideas, right? Like, he specifically rejects the policies that the party supports. So I thought he was benign. He's just a dude that says stuff, yells into a microphone. But now he's getting dangerous, man. Because what he's doing, his platform is so large that he's being used as a tool to promote the ideas that says, now we're not going to fix policing because we won't be able to fix policing until you can get the thing across to people that I just explained to you. That, hey, maybe there's a better approach. Maybe we should have some very, very, very trained people who patrol the streets, right? And they're just trained to patrol. And then maybe we should have some very trained people who look into crimes, like detectives. But like the detectives aren't just people who patrol for a long time and then they become detectives. It's so stupid the way we police America, right? Like you can just be a detective because you pulled over people for 10 years in traffic stops. And after you serve your 10 years pulling over people in traffic stops, they think you're qualified to solve crimes. And then after you've solved 2% of crimes for like 10 more years, then you get to be in charge of the police department. And Stephen A. Smith is saying, like, we're going to keep doing that. And not him, right? Because we know he ain't going to get elected. But the people who are listening to him, the people who he's talking to, he's solidifying the stupid method of policing as correct. And he's demonizing the logical process of improving law enforcement in America. And we know that the process that we have now disproportionately arrests, prosecutes, abuses, shoots, and kills Black people. The police in America now is the definition of anti-Black. It is the definition of racist. And Stephen A. Smith says, keep doing the racist thing. He's promoting anti-Blackness. And the other thing is, when you think about, I remember when Donald Trump first started running. And I don't know if you guys watch MSNBC, but like MSNBC for years now, their biggest show, their biggest person, on air person has been Rachel Maddow. And I like Rachel Maddow. But I remember when Donald Trump first started running, and black people were saying, "Hey, this guy is dangerous. What he's saying is dangerous. His rhetoric is dangerous." And MSNBC, and it's Rachel Maddow specifically, the biggest show on that network, said, "We're not going to cover him because it's a joke." Like most of his campaign, they did not cover Donald Trump because their biggest on-air talent said it was a joke. What he's going to do, what he's saying about black people is a joke. So I don't want to make that mistake with Stephen A. Smith. Because when you look at Stephen A. Smith, right, and you look at Donald Trump and compare the two, right, they have a lot of the same qualities, right? This egomaniacal media figure that really doesn't have a particular base. They really don't know a lot about governing. They just famous. And they're entering the political arena with their fame as their calling card, as their most important quality. And they're just spouting nonsense. They're spouting nonsense to white people. So I don't even think we can like stop treating Stephen A. Smith. I think we have to stop treating him like a joke, like he's unimportant. I don't think he can get any party's nomination, but I don't think we have to use that as the qualification of like why he's not important, because what he's doing is promoting that anti-black form of politics and thought. What he's doing is saying that this is a viable political candidate, right? Like it might not be Stephen A. Smith, but what if it's another famous person? What if it's like Nick Saban, right? Like Tommy Tuberville is just like a football coach. If you guys don't know who Tommy Tuberville is, he's the senator from Alabama who is called the dumbest man in Washington. Literally, like it's a running joke that he's the dumbest man in Washington. He was a football coach at my alma mater, actually, Auburn. And he got elected as senator from Alabama, even though he didn't live in Alabama. He just coached football there for a little while. Like that's how this whole thing started. And that's what Stephen A. Smith is. Like he's a famous person in sports who could get some political traction just because he's inside the last monoculture in America, which is sports, right? Like white men love sports. Black men love sports. And when you get to talk to those people all day, every day, and you get a platform and you build a relationship with them, even if it's just, parasocial, I think you become dangerous in the real world. And so I think we have to be aware of who Stephen A. Smith is, what he's saying, and how he's specifically promoting anti-blackness uh, and using white supremacist rhetoric to do it. The next question is, so what do you think of the J. Cole album? I listened to the J. Cole album. It's good. Like, I don't think that we have to say this is the best album of all time or like it's terrible. It's straight. It's a J. Cole album. I like J. Cole. I listen to his music. And ag- I am I think everybody has a opinion on music. And I treat music like I try to treat everything else. Like I listen to music, but I listen to mostly hip hop and old school R&B. Like I'll listen to new stuff if I really, really like it. And what I really, really like, I have realized is that it sounds like old stuff. So I'll listen to like Summer Walker. I loved Sir, but it's mostly just new stuff that sounds like old stuff. And even when I listen to hip hop, I'm listening to lyrics. And so that's why I like J. Cole, but I know I'm not the typical music consumer. So, like, y'all shouldn't listen to my opinion on music, just like you shouldn't listen to Stephen A. Smith talk about policing or politics. Like, I'm the least qualified person to talk about specific forms of music. Now I can talk about, like, the history of music or how it has a place in the culture, for instance. I don't know if you saw this thing about, there's a Bay Area artist called La Russell, and I like him, right? Because his music, he makes hip hop, and he makes that Bay Area sounding hip hop, but it's not conscious. It's just human. He talks about himself and his flaws, and he brags about himself, and he talks about, women, but he talks about them as if they were like human beings. So, like, I think people try to paint him kind of conscious, but he's just like a dude who is not toxic. But anyway, he was saying that he was a fan of Lil Wayne, and then he started listening to Lil Wayne's music, and he realized as he grew that, like, he outgrew Lil Wayne, and Lil Wayne had, you know, sometimes very little to say, and sometimes a lot of bad stuff to say. And there's been this whole online debate about it. And my feeling about that is not from a music critique, but here's the thing, right? I talk and write about this all the time. So I think I've talked on here about when I first started, one of my first jobs. I had a job at WHSC in Hartsfield at a radio station. And this was when you played actual records. So when I first started in radio, I would go in and we'd have like this wall of records, and they each had stickers on them. The covers of the records had stickers on them, red, blue, green. And that just meant like how long it was out, whether it was a new record or an old record, what like the whether it was a slow song or a dance song, stuff like that, right? And on that whole wall, whatever those stickers were, all my job is like during the hour, you need two greens, a blue, and a yellow, right? I could play whatever song, like I need to play a fast song and a slow song and a new song and an old song, but it was up to me which song I played. The person behind that thing, the person who knew the music, had control of what you heard as an audience member. When I went to well, during the year between high school and college, my sister was at Morris College, and I went to the summer program there, and they kind of matched you up, everybody in that summer program, with a job on campus, and they found out that I worked at a radio station, so I worked at this college radio station while I was, like, technically a high school student, and that was, like, R&B music all, and gospel. But I remember this was the summer that, Quincy Jones' Secret Garden record came out, and I played it, and I played, like, a remix, and there was on the remix, uh, was I not Isaac Hayes, who Barry White just talks about pulling a woman's panties down, and I got in trouble for that, right? You can't play that on college radio. This is terribly too it's too graphic, right? I went to college and they let me choose, right? But they let me choose from a predetermined list. Then I got out of college and I worked at another radio station while I was in grad school. And by then, it was the GM, like it was pre-programmed. All I just had to do is sit there and push buttons. So now there are people in a corporate office somewhere choosing which records you hear. And during that time, right, hip hop was growing. And it went from me being able to play, like, 1 hip hop song maybe every 2 hours to you could play more hip hop songs, but you had to play the ones that we tell you to play. And what I'm trying to explain is that early, we got to hear the music that black people like. The audience has simply chose the music. There were songs, there was for every NWA, there was a KRS-One. For every, you know, gangster rap group in LA, there was a Public Enemy. And they were creating music that reflected all the parts of black culture. And then white people started choosing the music. And it only reflected one part of black culture, right? Lil Wayne is a hugely successful artist because he's on the radio. La Russell is an independent artist because no multi-million dollar corporation is going to back somebody who makes music that reflects the reality of black people. You got to think about it, right? Like you talk about, well, somebody saying, well, Kendrick Lamar. Yeah, who's Kendrick Lamar signed to? A black company, right? Look up who distributes Sexy Red. And ultimately, right, I don't blame Lil Wayne because Lil Wayne could say whatever he wanted to if there was a La Russell who had the same corporate dollars and strategy behind him as Lil Wayne, right? And so I don't blame the artists, right? Like we like to blame the hip hop artists for promoting this poison. There was always Lil Wayne. There was always a Sexy Red. There was always somebody who did that. Like there were people in comedy in the 1960s that made what they call party records, and they were just cussing and all of that. And then there was a Richard Pryor, and there was a Flip Wilson too. And so, as black people, we saw all aspects of our culture, and now we don't because the music industry has been corporatized, right? And that's the problem. Capitalism, not what Lil Wayne writes. What LaRussell was making a critique of is capitalism. You can dislike the contents of Lil Wayne's music, and that's your prerogative. But ultimately, if you choose not to consume rappers like Lil Wayne who have the content that Lil Wayne has, this is the problem. You Because of the corporatization of music, you just can't consume black music. You can't listen to it on the radio because they're gonna play the Lil Waynes, not the La Russells. You can't consume it on Spotify because that's an algorithm. You can't consume it in the record store because ain't no more record stores, right? Like, literally, you have to know somehow about a black artist now, uh, outside of mainstream media to even be able to find actual black music. And that was the preemptive strike that capitalism did to black music. Because now, right, anybody can make a record and just upload it to the internet and you can hear it. But they preemptively created a position in hip hop music where capitalism is more important. How Right? So even if it's on the internet, how are you gonna find it? They control the algorithm. You can't even hear about it on social media because they just control that algorithm. And so when we think about hip hop as a culture, yesterday, so I don't know if you know the name Lisa Davis. Lisa Davis is a black woman who is a legendary lawyer, and she was she's she's my lawyer, but not she probably has no idea who I am. Like, I mean, she's my lawyer in name, but she's like the lawyer for Jay-Z and everybody you know. Well, she has a book coming out, and it's called Our Minds Were Always Free, so look for it. And I got she sent me an advanced copy, and it starts with, like, the beginning of Black creativity, right? Black music, she goes through Black film from Oscar Micheaux to Spike Lee, and she talks about, how music, hip hop became the number one genre, right? She talks about how hip hop could not become the number one genre in the world until white people got control of it. And not because it was not able to, it was that they would not let it. So let's go back to what I was talking about on those radio stations. You're talking about an independent radio station that hired a high school kid to play records on the radio. And at the end, you were talking about a corporate owned, the stations were called Cumulus, a corporate owned thing that says, we're going to make money off of this music. And that's the difference between, and it's not that black people couldn't have made hip hop the number one genre, is that all of those, for every one of those independent radio stations, man, they had 52 cumuluses. So they controlled what people heard. Radio was the original algorithm. And it's hard to beat capitalism because they got all the money. I don't even know. Have you ever seen that video? If you're not, look it up. Like, just Google look it up on YouTube. Like, there's a video of Chief Keef trying to get a record deal, and he's in this corporate room with all of the people at this billion-dollar company, and it's like a room filled with white people, like maybe 40 people lined up against the wall, and there's a conference table in the middle of the room, and he's like rapping, and they're just sitting there, like they're not judging the music or anything. They're just staring, and then he hops up on a table and just starts like dancing harder and dancing harder. That's how hard you gotta dance to get on their radio, to get inside that corporate structure. You're right. I'm sorry, Stephen. You're right. It's Bobby Shmurda. I don't think Chief Keef even dances, right? It felt wrong when I was saying it. It's it's Bobby Shmurda. But yeah, that's how hard you gotta dance to get inside that system. They don't, like, those people were not judging him by the quality of his music, right? They don't know hip hop. All of those white people don't go home and listen to Lil Wayne. They judging you on how hard you dance. And that's the critique of this music. When we're talking about like the kids and this music, now you ain't talking about really the music. I'm not qualified to talk about the music that kids are making because we don't get to hear it. Some of you know that I have, you know, I want to say in a previous life, but in this life, man, I spent a lot of time, besides being a writer and a journalist. Like, I spent a lot of time, most of the time, before, I would say 7, 8, 10 years ago. Most of my time spent was in the poetry world, right? And my poetry friends always think like it's wild that like most people who know you don't know you for poetry. Cause like I was the people who know the poetry world know me, but they're not necessarily in this kind of journalist black world that I'm in. But anyway, when you're on this poetry scene, what you're doing is like essentially going to like a lot of open mics where there are poets, but there are also like young rappers, young writers, young singers, comedians. You're on the same bill with all of those people. So I got a look at the music. I had a look at the music that like the new artists were making, and it wasn't Bobby Shmurda music. It wasn't Lil Wayne music. That ain't the music. Like, that's not when we say, well, this generation's music, bro, you never heard this generation's music, right? What you're hearing is what white people is picking out of black people's production. That's what you got to remember. And I'm not saying just white people as because they're white. I'm saying these are capitalists. They're capitalizing something. And the way that you capitalize on something is not just to pick the best talent. You got to sell a product. Like, you think about Outcast, right? Outcast had a revolutionary sound. And LaFace, who they were signed to, they were R&B producers. And but they knew talent, right? They didn't even really know hip hop. They knew talent. They knew something was revolutionary. But if you don't sound like something that existed before, how did the people who don't know black culture, don't know talent, don't know the specific genre of music, what do you think they're choosing? Like, what do you think those people around that table where Bobby Shmurda was dancing, what do you think they were choosing? When NWA went became started making hits, right? The music industry, the corporate music industry, I always point to that pivot. The corporate music industry just started picking groups who were gangster, right? I mean, who in NWA was gangster? Ice Cube was raised in like a regular two-parent home. Dr. Dre was a regular R&B music producer, but they sold an image to us. And when you listen to that early NWA stuff, it was kind of it was anti-cop, it was kind of revolutionary. And took they condensed it to gangster rap and just start picking up people who cuss, right? They took fuck the police and said the fuck is the important part. And that's the poison. It's not the Lil Wayne is poisoning our kids. I wouldn't mind my kids listening to Lil Wayne if the next song on the radio was going to be it's Poor Righteous Teachers, but ain't no more Poor Righteous Teachers. I wouldn't mind, you know, Sexy Red if the next song was going to be Sister Soldier. Ain't no more Sister Soldiers. And that's the point, right? Because we know a Sexy Red in our neighborhood. We know him. We know a Lil Wayne. We also know regular, degular La Russells who got talent, but we don't get to hear those people. And that's the point. Let me see. Omar Moore says two books on capitalism I highly recommend: Capitalism and Slavery by Eric Williams, and the book Capitalism by Sven Becker. And there's another one. I wish I could think of the name of it, the name of the author. I think it's called The Origins of Capitalism, but it's really interesting because it talks about how capitalism and intellectual property emerged, and it goes back to the 1300s and like the corn and wheat system in Europe. It's an interesting book. But yeah, so check out those two that Omar Moore mentioned. Omar Moore says, but Barry White was never disrespectful in his lyrics. Bruh, listen to the remix of, like, go online now and listen to like the extended remix of Secret Garden. Bruh. Barry White, like, is basically narrating uh like an afternoon sex scene. Like, yeah, let me pull your panties down. Yeah. He's like moan, like I think the moans are the most disrespectful part. Cause why Barry White moaning? Why did you keep the moans in? Like like that's wild. Like sometimes I'd be thinking about how hard um that how hard whatchamacallit was singing about, like Cisco was singing about thongs. Like there was no reason for Cisco to be that excited about thongs. Now you could make a thong song, but he was a little bit too excited about thongs, right? I think about that, right? Cisco could sing, but some of the stuff he was a little bit too excited about. I was worried about Cisco for a little while. Um, and remember how like remember when he made the song with DMX and he was singing real hard about what these bitches want from a nigga. Like he was just singing that too hard. Someone mentioned in the chat about your reflections on the life of Jesse Jackson. I wrote about him. You know, Jesse Jackson. So I'm in an era where I was born after Martin Luther King. And I was born and I grew up in a world I was an adult with kids by by Barack Obama. So for my generation, the generation that grew up in the 80s, man, Jesse Jackson was very important. And Jesse Jackson, I think what I wrote about is we don't understand that what you talk about the Democratic Party now and politics now, Jesse Jackson made that. Jesse Jackson made them that way. We don't talk about the influence that he had on politics. Like the Democratic Party didn't have race in their platform until Jesse Jackson ran. They like no party, neither party had ever, not in the platform, not on a stage, not in a speech, ever even said the word gay or lesbian until Jesse Jackson. Like you could go online and look at old articles about people questioning Jesse Jackson's religion because he said we should treat gay people as human beings. And it was like, well, you know, that lifestyle is sinful. And he was like, yeah, but we ain't talking about a lifestyle. We're talking about human rights. Jesse Jackson was a supporter of Palestine, right? And he always specifically talked about you can support Palestine without being um, anti-Israel. But the thing that Jesse Jackson, one of the reasons that Jesse Jackson was important is because he wasn't just like talking to adults, right? He was talking to children. He was talking to black people. Remember his one of the things we have to remember. So in 1994, when they were talking about the crime bill, and they said like, you know, the Democrats supported the crime bill. Remember, so when they wrote that 1994 crime bill after Bill Clinton was elected, The Congressional Black Caucus opposed it. And the reason the Congressional Black Caucus opposed it was because Jesse Jackson and a bunch of black leaders convened a meeting and they said, look, this is going to result in mass incarceration and it's going to be bad for black people. And during that time, when people ask, like, well, what do black people do about black on black crime? Jesse Jackson was actually going to black neighborhoods and talking to black youth about stopping the violence. That whole Stop the Violence movement emerged out of a Jesse Jackson initiative, Operation Push, Rainbow Coalition. So when they wrote that 1994 crime bill, the CBC opposed it. And to get the CBC on its side, especially that part about increasing the number on the police, they included Jesse Jackson's suggestions to put drug counseling in it, police abuse. The reason that the DOJ looks into police brutality is because there was a concession to get the CBC to vote for that 1994 crime bill. And it was going to pass without the CBC, but this is how you use political leverage. Well, everyone said that the CBC was whining. So what the CBC did was have this open hearing. You can look it up. You can Google this on C-SPAN. It's actually televised. And the main speaker at that hearing was Jesse Jackson. And Jesse Jackson, he wasn't just talking about politics. We like to think that he was just there rhyme, but Jesse Jackson knew policy. And he sits there and he goes through the statistics on crime. And he says, like, look, we know that crime is a socioeconomic problem. He says, if you build more schools and fewer jails, you would solve this problem. If you address economic inequality, you would solve this problem. If you address school underfunding, you would solve this problem. The easy thing to do is to build more jails. And so while we talk about LGBTQ rights as being woke, when we talk about the, not addressing black on black crime as being woke, we talk about calling everybody racist as woke. Jesse Jackson was saying this is how you fix the problem 30 years ago. And now we got idiots like Stephen A. Smith saying, if it was me, there wouldn't be no open borders. I tell you what, if I was president, I would fix the economy. Like, bruh, everybody's trying to fix the economy. Like, fix the economy is the easiest thing to say. That's how far we've gone now. But again, it ain't Stephen A. Smith's fault that he's dumb. It's the fault of, I don't know, I don't even know who to blame for the fault for putting a dumb man on TV and asking him about politics. Because anybody got to answer. You're like, what you do if you're a president? You know what I would do? I would give everybody reparations. Yeah, I can't, but a dumb person would say that because you can't give everybody reparations. Yeah, you know what I would do if I was president? I would make ice cream healthy. You know what I would do? Um, I would make every rapper focus on their lyrics. I would make it so that you could drink Coca-Cola and lose weight instead of, buying weight loss drugs and having to exercise and eat healthy. I would make it so that all men were 6 feet tall because, women don't like short dudes. And then I would give women the power to excommunicate guys out of America who act stupid, right? I would give every woman a coupon that allow them to leave whenever a guy takes them to the Cheesecake Factory. I would make Skechers and Nikes the same price. I would bring back the old Kanye. I would just stop people from robbing. I would just say, "You know what? Let's stop robbing." I would make it so that everybody who crossed the border filed their immigration paperwork. That's how I would fix the border problem. And you talk about the economy, all you got to do is just make every company pay people $40 an hour. That's the minimum wage if I was president, $40 an hour. And if you work overtime, when you come home, your dinner gonna be ready. That's how it's gonna be when I'm president. I'm Stephen A. Smith. Vote for me. Like, that's the world we're living in now. Yeah, I would live. You know what? Someone said I would end domestic violence in every household. Yeah, I got a problem. In my platform, in Stephen A. Smith's platform, in my platform, if you are a victim of domestic violence, you get to do one of two things. You can call your cousin and get your lick back, or, or under Stephen A. Smith's administration, you could just kick them in the nuts. The kick them in the nuts policy would pass under the Stephen A. Smith administration. So yeah, like, I don't know why we're like, that sounds stupid, but that's exactly what this person who serious journalists are talking to sounds like. Anyway, it is 10:06. We have been here for an hour. I want to thank you all for your questions. I want to thank you all for joining, and we'll see you all in camp.